Hello and welcome to the next installment of Cylinder Radio. Today, my guest is community advocate David Hernandez, and we are going to talk about going green and all the perspectives on going green. So, David, thank you for coming on this podcast.
My pleasure.
So, for people that don't know, you and I are both in Los Angeles.
Right, North Hollywood for me.
Okay, yeah, I'm close by. I'm also in the Valley. So I think what we're going to be talking about with this idea of going green is something that is universal everywhere in this country and probably around the world. So maybe you could just give us a little bit of background as to why you're on the show. Why did I reach out to you? And what's the situation, just as like an objective kind of situation? And then we can get into some of the nitty gritty.
Right, and yeah, the devil was in the details. But basically, the state had set some standards for reducing the amount of pollution in the air with regards to vehicles that collect trash and recyclables. Also, to reduce the amount of trash that goes into landfills. And so they started looking at a program. Is how the commercial trash is dealt with in the city of Los Angeles. Up until the point of this new ordinance, there was about 180 trash companies doing business in Los Angeles. If you were a restaurant owner or an apartment owner, pizza shop, whatever, didn't make any difference what it was, that in order to dispose of your trash, you could call any one of the 160 or so companies, get a quote, and whoever gives you the best price for the best service, that's who you go with. And if they don't perform, you go with somebody else. Well, in looking at ways to achieve the goals set by the state, they started looking at, well, how can we transform the collection of trash for commercial businesses in Los Angeles to meet those objectives? Well, other groups got involved, environmental groups, labor groups, groups that are traditionally very politically active in getting politicians elected. And so they came up with the idea of having Los Angeles move to a system where only a certain amount of companies are allowed to pick up the commercial trash. And they divided Los Angeles.
Sorry, but the idea of
because it was more efficient. I mean, yeah,
more efficient. They meet certain standards.
They would meet certain standards, more efficient, better quality vehicles. And so what they did was they divided the city into 11 zones. So that's from Silmar to the north, San Pedro to the south, going out to Woodland Hills and East Los Angeles. Now, the problem is, in order to submit a proposal have a contract with the city of Los Angeles, you have to meet certain benchmarks that have nothing to do with the job that you're doing. One of them was that you had to be a union company, or you had to have a labor peace agreement with a union in order to submit a proposal with no guarantee to get the bid. So most of those companies that have been around for 50 or 60 years were mom and pop businesses that were second, third generation, where their grandchildren were driving the trucks or their children were running the office. And so they were not in a position to unionize just to submit a proposal. So that eliminated 95% of all trash companies in Los Angeles from even submitting a proposal. And that's why you had labor organizations that were really pushing this. And that these same labor organizations, we're not talking about corruption, but we're definitely talking about manipulating the system. You had the LA County Federation of Labor. Maria Elena Durazo was the chairman of that labor organization. She was also chairman of the board of an organization called LANE, Los Angeles Alliance for a New Economy. And they are an environmental labor group that really pushed this commercial trash franchise. Now, the chief administrative officer, Miguel Santana, wrote a report to the city council and said, look, we can meet all of these environmental objectives. We can have vehicles on the road, And we will be more efficient if we do a non-exclusive franchise. But if it's non-exclusive, that means the trash hauler doesn't have to unionize. And so, while that wasn't the main objective, it was an unintended consequence that basically eliminated competition. So you had companies that went out and bought state-of-the-art trash trucks. But since they didn't have a labor peace agreement, they couldn't submit a proposal. Mm. And so the city passed an ordinance for all commercial waste. That's for every commercial business. And that includes apartments and housing providers. And basically, they came down to 7 trash companies. 2 of them, Waste Management, which was a national corporation, Republic Services, also national. So the mom and pops were forced out, and the national corporations were given the exclusive rights. Now, you would think that if a company has the exclusive rights, we're in the San Fernando Valley, all of the West San Fernando Valley was awarded to Waste Management. So since Waste Management gets to pick up every commercial trash customer on one block, it would be more efficient. The cost should go down, not go up. Mm-hmm. So you had, of those 7 companies, Waste Management awarded 2 zones, Republic Services 2 zones, Athens 3 zones, and a couple of other minor companies. Now, what happened was the city basically increased the base rate to where you were talking about maybe somebody was paying $75 a month for commercial trash pickup. The city allowed the haulers to double that rate. But what came into play was all of these add-on services. So in the past, if someone came to you and they wanted your business, they said, okay, we'll take your trash out for $114. But now, since under this exclusive franchise, you cannot go with anyone else. They're saying, we're going to pick up your trash for $114. No, actually, I take it back. Now it's $214 as a base rate. But we're also going to charge you, if there's an electric gate and we have to push a button on a clicker, we're going to charge you $25 for that. If we have to go on your property and we have to move the trash can or the trash bin out to the street, we're going to charge you a distance fee. And if it's over 100 feet, we're going to charge you more. So what ended up happening, and I'll give you, and it is an extreme, but just to show you how extreme it can get, is that there was, because this included HOAs, homeowners associations, for condominiums. There was a 64-unit condominium HOA in Encino. This was all owner-occupied. These were all seniors. They had the same company for 10 years. Were paying $1,700 a month. The same company got the franchise. They went in there and they recalculated their charges, and they went from $1,700 a month to $19,000 a month. Now, so when people were calling and saying, well, my trash increase, my trash rates went up 100%, 200%, that was the norm. But most of it was 400%, 500%. And since those companies were charged with picking up all of the trash, there were about 60,000 complaints to LA Sanitation for trash that was not picked up, that was being left on the streets. Restaurants, the health department was coming in and citing restaurants for having unsanitary conditions because their trash wasn't being picked up. And so this has not worked out the way that the city or LA Sanitation thought it was going to work out.
No, or the way it was sold. So I'm a high school teacher. So I think the way this came about to my attention is I married into my wife's family is a family of immigrants who are small business owners. And my father-in-law is 74 years old. He still works every day at this small tool shop in North Hollywood. And I was just talking to him about just things in general, and he got really upset about the trash pickup. So he told me what happened, and basically he said, our trash pickup is this amount, and then it went up to this amount. And I recorded him, and I'll play that right here. Okay, and then so what this brought to my attention is I did not know what was going on. I had no idea. And again, because most people don't know because most people don't care, because most people it doesn't affect them. And the people who it does affect don't really have a voice, which is why I'm glad that you're here, David, to kind of explain it to the rest of us. But to my audience, this is why you should care. And I'm just going to kind of like break this down a little bit because as you're going into the specifics of that to tell the story, I could feel like there are probably people who are listening just like, I'm not following. I don't know. It's like, listen, this is why what you just broke down is really, really important. We get behind the idea of doing good in the world. We want to cut down on crime. We want to make the environmental changes that are possible. We want to help those that need help. Like we all are in line with this idea. And correct me if I'm wrong, David, on this, but this was pushed by our mayor, right, Mayor Garcetti.
All right, and this was, he wants to be the environmental darling.
Right. Yes. So there's things like mandatory like solar panels on roofs, and like he is like, we're in California, we're very woke, or we're very like into environmental issues. We ban straws and stuff like that. Which, okay, let's do that. Let's be solar. Let's help our environment and all that kind of stuff. And we think that. But this is what the cylinder is. This is the unintended consequences of what you're doing here. I use a metaphor sometimes where I say, your kids are playing on the floor and there's ants on the floor. So you spray some poison and then your kids start playing in the poison, they get sick. It's like you're thinking one step. You're not thinking what could happen from this. So to try and make things more environmentally friendly, the city of Los Angeles gave exclusive contracts to certain companies, the ones that could unionize and things as you explained, and prices have gone through the roof. And this is for small business owners and people who struggle to pay their bills. America is founded on the American dream. The idea that you can come to this country and work hard and achieve, and the things that will prevent you from doing that need to be carefully scrutinized. And regulation of business, this isn't things like Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, where people are throwing poison bread and dead rats in the sausage, or Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, where there's no fire exits and they're all locked. Those are regulations we all get behind. Okay, but there is an element here that we believe in the free market. There are good things about free market and there's good things about regulation, and we need to keep these really closely scrutinized. And I'm bringing you on this podcast because we're thinking someone says, hey, this is good for the environment, and everyone just goes on board. Okay, let's do it. Like, not thinking about what is going to come of this down the road. And small business in America needs to be cultivated. This is how you lift yourself out of poverty. For people who are deeply rooted in poverty, the way out is entrepreneurship. The way out is to become your own boss, build something of value, and promote that in your community until people will pay you for it. And this is hurting small business. This is keeping people at the top and hurting those at the bottom from rising. And it's ironic because we are such a progressive, staunchly democratic city and state that this is happening and people don't know about it.
Well, and it is very tragically ironic because the city council that promotes itself as being the most progressive, the most for individuals of color. I mean, the very first Hispanic trash company in the city of Los Angeles was put out of business. And these contracts from these small family businesses were given to national corporations. And it's like, wait a minute. But even worse, it's not working. The chief administrative officer said it would be more effective if we didn't make it exclusive. And so what we've seen now, and because of what's happening in China with regards to recyclables, some of these trash companies have been filmed. You're supposed to separate your recyclables from your trash. That's why you have a blue bin and you have a black bin.
Right.
Well, some of these companies are emptying both bins into the same truck. And so when they're called on, And so when they're called on it, and the customer's saying, well, wait a minute, do I have to keep separating? Oh, yes, you do. But why is it that you're putting it in the same truck? Well, we're taking it to our plant where we're going to separate it there. Well, what's happening is China has stopped accepting recyclables from people like the city because it's filled with trash. They're not achieving those goals. So where is it going? It's going to the landfill. So it is not successful. And so more and more, you have individuals that, they think it doesn't affect them, but here's the reality. Rents in Los Angeles, I think we can all agree, are pretty damn high, too high. Well, if you have a 3-unit apartment building and you're paying $74 a month for trash, and all of a sudden it's $474 and it goes up 5% every year, what are you going to do? You're going to pass that on to the renters. The renters are going to pay for this. And so that's why it is imperative that people who think they don't have a stake in the issue, they have to realize they're going to be the ones paying for it.
Yeah, and this is all the reason I bring up politics on this podcast and in my class a lot, because we have this like narrative that, if Garcetti's putting the solar panels up and he's doing this, environmental thing for the trash collection, that's why it's going green, not realizing that this is bad all around. And if you are a progressive, you should be upset by this and hold your politicians accountable for what's going on. And what's ironic, as a government teacher, I talk about how conservative political thinkers they're skeptical of big business. They don't like, big government. They don't want government getting too in your business and running things and getting too powerful. And then the more left side, the liberals, are skeptical of big business and not letting business get too powerful. But this is exclusive contracts. This is a monopoly, which is big business as it gets, pushed by progressive Democrats. So, there is hypocrisy, and it's not just Democrats. Republicans are hypocrites too. But in this specific situation, people of Los Angeles need to understand what's happening. But a lot of people who aren't affected by it directly, a lot of people who have that power, they just aren't. I don't know if they're not. I think they're just not aware. But they're definitely not holding the government of Los Angeles accountable for this, and it's really hurting people. And I know this firsthand from my family that has been hurt. My 74-year-old father-in-law and the 3 immigrants who are they're not balling. Immigrants who are in this country and trying to work hard, paycheck to paycheck. They are affected in a real way by this, and then you zoom out and it just looks like, Mayor Garcetti's doing all this wonderful things for the environment. Isn't this great? Isn't this wonderful that we're being so green? And it's like, yeah, the double entendre of green, right? Like it's just going to the greed of certain big corporations that the liberals should be very skeptical of.
That's why, like, a lot of these big corporations love working with progressives, because they can have a nice, caring exterior, but on the interior, they're racking it in. And the labor organizations now, I'm 100% for collective bargaining. As someone who is a conservative, who believes in, in the First Amendment, freedom of assembly, right to petition the government, to me, that's collective bargaining. But that doesn't mean you get to rig the system. And so here you have LA County Federation of Labor. They have a independent expenditure committee, the Committee for Safer Schools and Better Neighborhoods. And they're spending millions in independent expenditures getting these city council members elected so that they can then vote for schemes like this trash franchise that expands and creates the largest union takeover of a private industry in, as far as I can remember. This is a $5 billion industry that organized labor has taken over with the aid of the elected officials that they funded their campaigns through independent expenditures. So who is being hurt? The small individuals. The horror stories I'm getting of people who are being charged for trash bins that aren't even on the premises, people that are being charged for recyclables that the trash company is not collecting. I mean, over and over, there are challenges that are going on. And this is far from over. And what we saw this week, and this is why your podcast is so timely, is that the trash companies were threatening to sue the city of Los Angeles, because it is their contention that in the contracts, the city is forcing them to charge certain fees. Now, the city, because there are two lawsuits making its way through the court right now. One is against the city of Los Angeles for increasing the franchise fees, which is basically a tax, without putting it to a vote of the people. The city's defense is, well, we have nothing to do with the rates, so we're not violent, and the customers pay directly to the haulers. The other lawsuit is against the haulers for the fees that they are charging for all their add-on services. And the haulers are saying, well, no, we're not the ones imposing those fees. It's the city. And so you have two parties to the same contract pointing at each other saying, it's not us, it's them. The bad news for them, it's the same judge sitting on both cases. And so our last hearing was January 28th, where the city tried to say we had nothing to do with the fees. And the judge asked the city attorney, well, if you're saying your franchise fee is only based on a percentage of what they charge, if the hauler decides not to charge a customer, does that mean they don't pay you any money? And they couldn't answer it satisfactory for the judge.
This is just, it's really upsetting. Starting a small business, and I watched my wife start a small business, and I have friends that start, it is so difficult to just create a business where people want to give you enough money and then employ people so you can provide them with the ability to provide for their families. It is so difficult. There are enough natural hurdles to jump around, in just competition, that to add extra ones is just, it's immoral. And that's why I think that this is such an important thing. And we have to be careful because things that are emotionally charged, like say environmental issues, you'll ignore your better judgment and justify it with, well, it's okay because the world's gonna, get heat up in the
end in 5 years if we don't do it.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. But Bill Nordhaus just won the Nobel Prize last year or this year for his work on in economics on climate change and the idea of a carbon tax. And I read through it, and he's very clear that the carbon tax is a bad idea for the economy. But it's still being pushed. He won the Nobel Prize for this, and it's still being pushed, this idea that we need to tax carbon emissions and stuff like that. Where do you think this is going to come from? Where is this going to come from? And wouldn't it be nice if we could have zero, emissions and full employment and everything like that? Yeah, it is. But that's not what economics is. Economics is trying to meet the needs and wants with the available resources. And that is a very difficult thing to do. And you have to be careful. I don't care if it's an issue like this. I don't care if it's a social issue or a racial issue or anything like that. You can get blinded to reality because you're so emotionally connected to this utopian idea of what you're trying to create that you can be easily manipulated. And I feel like a lot of people in Los Angeles were easily manipulated. I think I would have been if I wouldn't have had the interactions that I did with my father-in-law and hearing the story from him, and then now following you on social media of what these people are going through. It's tragic, and I wanted to give you a platform, David, so that my listeners, some are in Los Angeles, some are all around the world. I mean, it's just starting, but I'm getting more and more listeners. This can happen anywhere. This. Well, no,
it's already started. This is spreading to other cities. The city of Long Beach, about 6 months ago, started the 5-year lead up to this. And so before all hell broke loose in Los Angeles, they were citing all of the wonderful goals and objectives that Los Angeles was going to achieve with their exclusive franchise. And so Long Beach is going through this right now. And what's happening is that you have small housing providers, and another example, that one, according to the ordinance, if you had an apartment building of 3 units or less, the city would pick up your trash, and they had a reasonable rate. the ordinance went into effect, and so I was receiving calls from all of these 3-unit apartment owners, and they're saying, wait a minute, I'm calling the city and they're refusing to pick up my trash. They're telling me that if I had a commercial hauler at the time the ordinance went into effect, they will not take me back. And so here you have these 3-unit apartment owners and 4-unit apartment owners that are paying almost $500 a month for an apartment. And, you know, many of them, they live in 1 unit and they rent out the other 2. And so if it's under rent control, there is a very hard process in order to pass some of those fees on. It's almost impossible. But the ones that aren't under rent control, and we're not only talking about apartments, you know, we're talking about commercial businesses. You want to start a business, you want to rent a space. Well, guess what? Those trash fees went skyrocketing as well. You restaurants where you had to have green bins, you had to have the blue bins, you had to have, and then the reality is that everything that somebody puts in a blue bin has value to it. It is a recyclable. So here we have the trash companies charging the customer to go and pick up items that they're going to sell on the worldwide market as a recyclable. So they're making money. They're making you do the separation. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, then they fine the housing provider or the business owner for contaminating the trash or contaminating the recyclables. So in reality, trash companies should be paying the customer for their recyclables.
Right. Yeah, because they're making money off it. This is like, it's interesting you bring up the rent control thing, because that was actually just on the referendum in Los Angeles. But if you are under rent control, you can't raise your rent, but then you will get your trash collection raised. So people will just get out of the game. Like, you'll find another way to just be able to provide for your family. So you're not going to do any kind of updates around the facility. You're not going to fix the broken pipes. You're not going to do a lot of things. The housing is going to become dilapidated. But again, rent control is promoted as, let's, make sure that poor people don't lose their homes, which of course we don't want poor people to lose their homes, but it's
how did that work in New York where they've had for 20 years?
It's checkers thinking. It's not chess. It's checkers. It's one step. Like, we actually had a gas tax on this last referendum, and it got passed because it was the promotions for it. And I put it on my Instagram, but the promotions for the gas tax said, if we get rid of this gas tax, when they had black and white pictures of roads collapsing and bridges and cars upside down, and people are like driving with their kids in the car, like, I don't want a bridge to collapse, so here's my gas tax. Like, not realizing how much tax is collected in California and how absurd it is that, it's just mismanagement of government that we would have a bridge collapse. Like, there's no reason for it. And how many, people who are driving 2 Teslas in Santa Monica are saying, yes, let's increase the gas tax, compared to how many, like Hispanic, garbage, like landscapers and stuff in their work truck that gets 9 miles per gallon, and they're using gasoline all the time for their mowers and blowers and stuff like that, that this is crushing them. These immigrants that we're supposed to be caring about, you're making their lives so much more difficult, and you don't even realize it. And I think that's what this is. It's just bringing awareness that if you really want to help poor people, immigrants, the environment, whatever it is, you got to think a little bit deeper than, I'm going to trust our government people to solve this for me. Like, you got to get deeper. These things are complicated, and we got to get a little bit better than just, okay, you go fix it. So David, I have 2 questions for you. One, what can we in Los Angeles, because there are people listening in Los Angeles, what can we do to help and get information on this? And then the second question that I can revisit is, what about the listeners who are in their cities? Like, how do they look into what is happening similar to this in their cities, municipalities, whatever it might be?
Well, if you're a commercial customer in Los Angeles, you're a member of the class. These are 2 class action lawsuits. So one of the things that we want to make sure that you do is save all of your receipts for all the extra charges, because whether your rates went up 100% or 1,000%. Make sure you have the documents to show the amount of money that you had to pay out. The class action lawsuit against the city is going very well. The city filed the demurrer to try and have it thrown out, and they lost. And so save all those receipts. You know, most of these city meetings were done behind closed doors. That's why we've subpoenaed the documents for those meetings. I've talked to major property owners. They weren't aware of this. It was by design. You know, they have committee meetings at City Hall. They'll have a council, 3 council meetings a week. But to go down there and sit through there, and if you have something to say, if it's at a budget and finance committee, they'll give you a minute to talk. But all of these things.
Sorry, what did Garcetti say about this? Has he made a formal statement? I haven't seen anything.
Oh, he said that it was off to a bumpy start, but the complaints are less, and it's moving forward. But the fact is, last week the city settled a proposed lawsuit from the haulers to eliminate the fee charged to move the blue recyclable bin out to the street, and that they'll no longer charge for, if your bin is locked, they won't charge you for the lock, and or the gate fee, but the bulk of the fees are still there. So, as much as it is a pain to pay attention, I would suggest everybody do it. If you're in Los Angeles, you have a neighborhood council, attend those meetings, try and keep up as to what's going on. But, in the end, those councils are advisory at best. Some of them have already been taken over by special interests. But that's why, if you're passionate about something, get involved. I mean, if run for office. I mean, many times these candidates in Los Angeles, here we're in the San Fernando Valley. You had a council member that was elected with less than 6,000 votes out of 127,000 registered voters. You had, the most affluent districts in the city of Los Angeles. The council member didn't get over 16,000 votes, and so people have to realize that their vote is important, because your vote represents a vote to at least 100 people, because most people don't engage in the system, and that's what politicians want. The special interests are engaged. That's why they'll spend $1 million or $800,000 to get Gil Cedillo elected on the LA City Council. And guess what? He's one of those right there championing the trash franchise.
Lawrence Lessig is a political science professor out of Harvard who has a great TED talk on this idea of like how just very few people in society, called the Lesters, this whole thing about the Lesters and how they influence, they're the real, like, quote unquote, like puppet masters. People say, like, talk about Illuminati or the Freemasons or something like that. It's like, it's just a couple of people that throw money at these politicians, and then they just get it. They just, they just get what they want. Because people, the average person, they might come out and vote, for or against Donald Trump or something, and that's all covered on CNN, and that's in the forefront. But the local elections, the things that really affect you and your family in a real way, like, what do the public parks look like? What do your roads look like? How are the police being treated and stuff like that? Like the stuff that will actually affect you, people just aren't involved. So I love that. Yeah, run for office. I'm actually working with a young guy for the 12th district in Los Angeles right now. He sees all this, and he's very aware of what's happening here with the trash collection. And he said almost the same thing you just said. He's just like, this is ridiculous. I'm gonna run, because he's just tired of it. And he's a young kid, and he's just like, maybe I can do something here, because everyone else is so entrenched in that kind of cronyism that's going on. And he's running as an independent. He's like, I'm not going to be tied to a party. He's like, I'm just going to try and do the right thing, because it seems so unusual and so rare to do the right thing.
Yeah, well, and I encourage people to do that, because you really get to learn how the sausage is made, and it's not pretty.
It's not,
but it's also very fragile, and special interest groups and politicians count on people believing that A, either their vote is not going to count, or B, they're going to show them and they're not going to vote. I mean, that's exactly what the political operatives want. They want people to not vote and make them think it's their idea. I learned that from Gary South, who was Gray Davis's campaign manager. I attended a forum on how to get more voter turnout, and Shawn Steele was a former chair of the state Republican Party, and a editorial board member from the LA Times, and they started talking about what the candidate looks like, the issues, and Gary South starts laughing, and they look at him and he says, "Get more people out to vote? Why would you want to do that? The last thing you want is informed, angry people going to the polls."
Yeah.
You examine the election cycle and you figure out how many votes you need. You focus on that and you discourage everyone else from voting, and you make it think it's their idea.
And people don't have civics educations. I was actually collecting just to get this young man on the ballot, just to get him on the ballot. I was collecting signatures. I told him that I'd do that. And I was at the park with my son, and I asked someone, "Hey, they had all the paperwork," and I was like, "Can you sign this?" He's like, "Nah." He's like, "I don't want to sign anything." I was like, "Why?" And he's like, "Well, I just don't trust it." I was like, "Well, here's all the paperwork. You can read it." He's like, "Nah, just like not interested." I was like, how do you think democracy works? Like, how do you think these people end up in City Hall and deciding what you can and can't do with your life? These people, like, how do you think they get there? And just there's just such an apathetic, like, whatever. And just in closing, David, there's these weird, like, I just keep coming back to these same points over and over again in all my podcasts. It doesn't matter. I'm talking to people about athletics or about politics or about all kinds of different things, education. And one thing that keeps coming up over and over again is people trying to run away from responsibility. People just want to give up their responsibility and just have someone else take care of it. So I don't want to have to deal with it, just have someone else take care of it. And that goes for environmentalism as well. I read this report that these social scientists went out and they asked people, "Do you care about environmental issues?" They said yes. "Do you care about climate change?" They said yes. They said, "Would you do something to help make it better?" They said yes. They said, "Will you lower your thermostat 5 degrees in the winter and raise it 5 degrees in the summer?" And they said no. Like, people are so unwilling to do anything to make things better. So they'll just give it up to Garcetti. I'm sure he'll just do the right thing. And it's not even a knock on Garcetti. Like, it's just it's just the game. They're playing the game, and it's up to us to hold them to a better standard, because people live up or down to your expectations. And if we just keep a really low bar for our representatives, then they're going to hop over that low bar.
Yeah, no, and that's why when anybody runs for office, and especially when I talk to younger people, I said, you know what, get involved, because whether you win or lose, you're going to raise an issue, you're going to be asking questions, you're going to be pointing something out, and and especially in the special election that you're talking about, here you have the lineage from Hal Burnson to Greg Smith to Mitch Englander, and now Mitch leaves town. And so they bring Greg Smith back. Now, here's the kicker. When Greg Smith was on the city council, he was vehemently opposed to the commercial trash franchise. When he left city council, he went to work as a consultant for Waste Management. Waste Management is the trash company that got the exclusive rights to pick up all the commercial trash in District 12. And so, while I've known Greg for a long time and he's a friend, what a conflict of interest to have a consultant for Waste Management sitting in the interim seat in District 12. And now who are they pushing? John Lee, the staffer, as the heir apparent to the lineage from Hal Burnson to Lee. When Lee, there was something about a $75,000 sexual harassment lawsuit, or it wasn't a lawsuit, but a claim from someone in that office.
Yeah,
that was
like
paid
the
off
Me Too movement stuff. Yeah.
Yep. And so they're acting like, well, it really doesn't mean anything because he's a nice guy. I'm sorry. It's
you got to hold the
same
same standards for all of these people. You can't hold, but you got to hold them all at the same standard. But like all these local government, everyone knows who, Donald Trump is or Nancy Pelosi, but like you should know who's your representative locally and get involved and go out and vote and meet these people and, reach out to them. And the one who reaches back and can talk to you and you can pick their brain about stuff, like it's worth it. It was not that much of a time investment. Give up one Netflix show or something like that and just do this a little bit, because it can really affect you, but it won't affect you if you're not in there playing the game. If you're just going to accept whatever is handed to you, then you'll just assume that, this corruption will continue. But you can be empowered to do something to change it. So, that's why this is going green. It's more complicated than just mandate that people put up solar panels or collect garbage in this better way. It's much more complicated than that. And we have to really hold our elected officials to a high standard and get involved. I love that, David. Yeah, get involved, look into things. Don't just accept that this is the way it is. You can make changes. You really can. It's not just like me being the teacher, like, you can do it, sport. Like, you actually can. And you are, man. Like, David, thank you for coming on this, because you are, and that's why I reached out to you. And like, the fact that you're just like standing up for these people that everyone claims to be standing up for, I think it's very noble. And I really appreciate what you're doing, just on behalf of my family and for the many people who don't have a voice. Like I said, all those landscapers and pool guys and stuff like that are hardworking people. A lot of them as immigrants coming to this country to bust their butts so their kids can have a better life. Like, you're doing this for them, and it's something that not all superheroes wear capes, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
So real last thing. Is there anywhere where people can reach you or stay up to date on this? Can you give a
the Facebook page, Repeal the Trash Monopoly. Yeah, that's probably where you found me, or my Facebook page. And there's a lot of stuff happening in the legal realm, and we go back to court March 4th. The trash haulers are trying to get their case thrown out, and you know what? And they may be somewhat successful with this settlement that they made with the city, because if the city had to give them permission to not pick up trash, that kind of puts the ball in the city's court. Mm-hmm. And so there could be a lot. If you're a commercial business owner, if you're a renter, if your rent has gone up because of it, you're a stakeholder in this fight.
Okay.
So yeah, Facebook is the best one.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, the Repeal the Trash Monopoly on Facebook.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. David Hernandez, thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
You're most welcome.